Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is Pit Talk Pulling Pits and Opinions with your host, Gunny G, where service members help service members, period. Follow, like, subscribe everywhere you get your podcasts and only on Twitter because that's all I have, really. Uh, YouTube, Rumble, hit it. Ladies and gentlemen, we got a special guest. I'll let him introduce himself. Sir, thank you for coming on. We appreciate your time, your service to this country, and professional bio, duty stations, where you've been at, operations, family, the whole shebang. Hit it. Floor is yours.
Wow, that's a pretty wide open intro. So Captain Chris Kuehne did over 20 years in the United States Marine Corps. I was enlisted, stand on those yellow footprints in the early 90s. Trying not to age myself here too much.
Too late.
Yeah, so worked my way up to staff sergeant. I started in good old 3rd Battalion, 5th Marines, and I was in Scout Sniper Platoon in the early 90s. Loved every minute of it. I had some good opportunities, the typical thirst mute deployments, 30 worst, whatever you want to call them. But yeah, I loved my time, but I always thought that, I had some officers that were in charge of me. I've had good officers, I've had bad officers, I have good enlisted, bad enlisted. But I had some questionable officers that were kind of over me, and I thought I could do better. So I decided to become an officer and went into the MESEP program and became a Marine Corps officer, and I wouldn't have changed it for the world. But I've been to Paris Island as a PMI. I wanted to be a drill instructor, but I never had that opportunity because I was selected for MESEP, but always been combat arms. So I went as an officer, I became an artillery officer,
Nice.
but I've never done artillery. No. I never did artillery. So went to 2nd Battalion, 11th Marines, did provisional infantry operations in Fallujah, in the Battle of Fallujah, and came back and I had certain skill sets. So they sent me on a MIT team, and I lived, worked, and trained with Iraqi soldiers the rest of my career until I was injured in 2006 in Ramadi in the 5 Kilo district by a vehicle explosive. Been to Marine Corps Barracks 8th and I, probably one of the best and unknown duty stations in the Marine Corps. Absolutely loved being on the Beltway with 8th and I. That was, and I say the best because that gave me an opportunity to serve more than just the Marine Corps. Laying our fellow service members to rest in Arlington National Cemetery was probably one of the high points of my career. Being able to put at ease mothers, fathers, brothers, sisters, and laying their loved ones with dignity to rest with dignity at Arlington National Cemetery was just an absolute honor. Of course, we did other things there at Marine Barracks 8th and I, but that was truly an honor. But I got reclassed because I was PDQ, permanently disqualified from deployment because of my injuries. And the Marine Corps was going to try to medically retire me, and I fought it. And they gave me one option. And telling a combat arms Marine that he's going to be an adjutant and push paper was a little difficult. So I call myself the combat adj. I did that for about 4 years. Company commander, adjutant for 1 MHG, and 9th Communication Battalion, very interesting unit. But yeah, after I did 4 years as an adjutant, selected as a major, I decided to hang it up. It was amazing. I miss it. I really do miss it. And it's not so much I miss the Corps as I miss the Marines. And I miss leading Marines. I miss the camaraderie. I miss the brothership of my fellow Marines most of all.
Okay. Well, that actually goes into first. There's a lot there. Which one was your favorite duty station? You said 8th and 9 because of.
Yeah, I would have to say 8th and I. I mean, doing the Friday night parades and the sunset parades in Washington, D.C. Was amazing. But, supporting, I don't know if you've ever seen some of the stuff that we do, supporting the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier and doing those parades at the wreath laying ceremonies, was absolutely amazing. Having an opportunity to work with the unknown soldiers, the Guardians, so to speak, and just doing the burials at Arlington National Cemetery was just, it sends, chills down your spine. Every time I would show up for one of those and lay one of our service members to rest, our brothers or our sisters, it was just, it's chills down your spine, and it's something that you don't forget.
Wow. All right. I could feel it through the screen, sir. I could feel it through the screen. That's crazy. Well, I'll tell you, which one's your worst duty station that you didn't like so much?
I have to be honest, 1 MHG, just not desirable. And I think that's, After my injury in '06, Ninth Communication Battalion, I did both. I was a company commander for Ninth Communication Battalion headquarters, and I was a company commander for 1MSG headquarters. So I was dual hatted, and I was the ADJ. um, and dealing with, services have their 1%. Every service does, Army, Navy, Marine Corps, Air Force, Coast Guard. But seeing kind of the underbelly of the Marine Corps and having that exposed and dealing with, the lower caliber of the Marine Corps, not only was disappointing, but it took its toll on me over time. That was probably had to be my worst duty station by far. And I didn't have the opportunity to, you know, um, participate. Why I joined the Marine Corps is because we are the tip of the spear. You have the varsity and you have the JV, and in my opinion, every other service. And I love my fellow service members, but if you want to join my team, you have to try out. If I want to join your team, I can walk on, and that's just the nature of the beast.
That's right.
So, um, I do miss it, but that was probably my worst duty station. But I mean, is there really a bad duty station where there's Marines at? It's all subjective.
That's good. Wait to say that's well said, sir. That's good. Is it a bad duty station when you got Marines? That probably not. But I'm sorry that it ended that way, right? Because it caused a little bit of adversity for you. Were you married at the time that you were transitioning out of the Marine Corps?
No, 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 no.
No. Okay.
I didn't marry my wife until after I exited the Marine Corps. And I married her a little bit later in 2014.
Okay. Congratulations. You're not the typical statistic where you have one divorce, one NJP. You're definitely a Mustang through and through, huh?
Yeah, I mean, for sure. Yeah, I mean, it
That's,
was well worth it. Yeah.
any kids?
I do. I have one. I have one
Okay.
9-year-old little boy and trying to raise him right. Yeah, absolutely.
That's good. And where did you relocate after you got out?
I came to Arizona. Well, no, I retired to Kansas. And I worked for the railroad. I had a job lined up and worked for the railroad for a while. And man, I tell you what, that job was probably worse than being in the Marine Corps as far as deployment. I mean, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, literally. And it was just constant. I did that for about 7 years and decided to hang it up. It took a couple years off, finished my master's degree, and, just kind of moved on.
Okay. Well, let me ask you some. A lot of service members across the board struggle with transition. How was your transition from active duty to civilian for you the first couple of years?
You
Mentally,
know,
physically, emotionally?
that's an interesting concept, and when you look at military service members in the perspective of, let's say, when I came in initially, even, the service members, the Gulf War and, the war on terrorism, it's unique, right? Because we saw a resurgence, right? So you have a specific culture when you look at the generation that went to Vietnam. They came back, like my father, and they just did not talk about it, right? And they saw things, and Vietnam lasted. It was horrible, and things happened in Vietnam that we probably can't even speak of, but it lasted for so many years. And then you have the war on terror, the vast majority, my time, lasted, 20 years, more than 2 decades. And we're still fighting in the Middle East and still have, geopolitical issues in the Middle East that still continue to persist. So, the rate at which, and I can only speak for Marines and, some of my buddies in the Army, the rate at which we deploy 6 months. I mean, we have spent literally years deployed. I can say that I have years being deployed, and it takes its toll. And so I know I was injured in 2006. I struggled. I really did. I lost Marines. I've lost friends. I lost my best friend in Iraq in 2004. And, I really struggled with grief, and I really struggled with guilt for years. And that's something that I still have to work on every day. Um, and I remember, going through TAMP and all those things. And still, I don't think it's something that they really discuss. And I think it was, and I struggle with injuries, surgeries, back, chest, neck, I mean, you name it, right? So that still affect me to this day. But I suffered a traumatic brain injury in '06. My back, my chest, my thoracic injuries, a whole host of things that I struggle with. But more than that, we don't talk about what's wrong with us, right? We don't talk about what's bothering us because we're Marines. And I remember being in California in 2010 timeframe. And this is where I met my wife back when at the mental health facility, the old hospital over there on Camp Pendleton over by the Wounded Warrior Battalion. And actually went to my commanding officer and was like, sir, I'm struggling. I need some help. Something's got to give. I'm functioning day to day. And it was hard as an officer to do that as a captain and say, the things I've done and the things I've seen, I need to get some help. And so I ended up going to, I was the first officer apparently. I went through IOP, which is an intensive outpatient program over there with mental health to deal with my PTSD issues. And, I was still dealing with a lot of my injuries. And um, I decided to look at those things and I advocate for Marines to look at those things. It's not a sign of weakness, but a sign of strength, right? Go take care of your issues because when you don't take care of those issues, they start to exasperate over time. And so you have a good Marine, you're a good person, right? And those problems can exasperate to the point where, quite honestly, you say, oh, that guy's a shitbag. He's not a shitbag. He's got problems he needs to deal with, and they're affecting him. So still to this day, I still do, mental health, and I'm not afraid to say it, and, take care of my problems related to PTSD. And it's something we need to continue to do and advocate for our service members to do on a daily basis just to keep healthy. So,
And that's good. It's good information because some there's still a stigma, right? You could say, especially for Marine, there's still a stigma. You're weak. You're this, you're that, and the other. So that's really good information to get from you, that has a wealth of experience and knowledge, right? You've done it, you sustained it, and now you're dealing with it day to day, right? And so, what's some of the things that you're doing day to day that help you out that maybe can help somebody else out?
again, it's developing those toolbox because, I always like to go back to, the Vietnam era. Those guys came out and they didn't take care of it. And, it wasn't until recently, and you see this resurgence of Vietnam veterans in the VA, and they're going to these PTSD related health classes, wellness checks, things of that nature. They're getting involved in some of these organizations that advocate for PTSD. And it's because of our generation who spent over 2 decades involved in the Middle East and doing the things that we did, that it's become okay, to be not okay, so to speak, right?
Mhm.
But you have to develop those tools over time. And it's something that it takes time, it takes patience, and it takes effort. You have to be honest with yourself. But if you just go walking through life, with a heavy load, eventually your back's going to break under the weight, and nothing good is going to come out of it.
Yeah, I agree. Let me ask you. Let me backtrack just a little bit and touch on a different type of transition. Right, you take the uniform off, and now you're a civilian. How did that feel for you?
It was difficult. Because again, I've been out of the service since 2013. So I remember the tap and tamp classes that I went through. And I don't know if they adequately prepare service members to get out because, you had resume. I guess what you have to say is garbage in, garbage out, right? So if, service members are getting out and they don't take it seriously, they're setting themselves up for failure. Um, because it's pretty interesting. I'm out. I'm the Arizona president for American First Veterans Chapter, and we advocate for veterans. And I talk to veterans on a regular basis. And some of the things that we discuss is educational benefits, right? So there's a whole host of educational benefits that I don't think that the military really puts out because, in reality, when you're in the service, right, and I think things have changed, you can essentially go to school for free. They pay that. They used to be, at least for me, it was, I think, a 75% they would pay your tuition. And you could do, classes over at the education center to get college credit. And I think those things still exist. But, how many service members waste their GI Bill, don't ever use their GI Bill once they exit active service? And I think it's something that is a asset that is really underrated and lost because you not only have the GI Bill or post 9/11, you have vocational rehabilitation and assistance. Those things pay for, for you to be an electrician, to be a pilot, to be a whole host of things, anything you want to be when you get older, when you grow,
When you
get big,
grow up?
yeah, when you grow up. And I talked to Navy guys, Air Force guys, Marines, and they never use those benefits. And I see that they're unhappy with what they do. There was that expectation that after I get out of the Marine Corps, the Marine Corps, I come from feeling invincible to now being in the civil sector, right? And going through the doldrum of daily life. And they're not happy. And life is what you make of it. I took advantage of every single thing that the military service provided while I was enlisted. I went to college, got my degrees, I got my master degrees, certifications, everything so that I could find that right job and be happy as a civilian and still contribute to military service and be happy with life. And I think we need to advocate for our military service veterans to take advantage of those educational services and job placements and things like that.
I agree. I think I remember when I came in, and I don't want to age you, but I'm going to either I'm too young or you're getting old for 40. I mean, you look great for 40. So, but I'd say in 2010 they still had taps and tamps, and they changed it over to TRS. And now TRS, the program itself, I think it's a little more in depth. It's a week long, right? You got 3 days, and you got 2 days of specific what you want to do. So I think it's good. I think Marines, service members across the board should take advantage of it, pay attention, like you said. It is what you make of it, and if you don't pay attention, you're losing out on a lot of information. And you can go more than once, which is great because if you miss something on this specific seminar, you can go to this seminar for 2 days and get more information there, which is
Oh,
really
wow.
good. So yeah, it's really good. And then now to speak on the Scopies, they cover the class. They cover, I think it's 6 classes total per year.
Nice,
Yeah, so
nice.
it's a part-time student. Obviously, you can't be full-time unless you use the GI Bill, then you become a full-time student. But I don't recommend that on active duty, anyways.
Yeah,
You're
that's good.
losing out on a benefit. You waste the benefit on active duty, and
That's
you
right.
you you should be using TA. But yeah, it's good. It's good gouge. You talk about camaraderie. You miss Is that the biggest thing you miss? The camaraderie with the Marines?
Yeah, I mean, being in military service, being a United States Marine is different than being in any branch of the service. I've been around soldiers, sailors, airmen, and when you are a Marine, you are set apart from the rest of the crowd. And it makes you feel, at least for me, every day that I used to wake up and put on that uniform and strap my boots on, yeah, it made you feel invincible. And it made you feel absolutely that you were part of a brotherhood like no other. Because still to this day, I talk to guys and they say, "Oh, you're an ex." No, I am still a Marine. I am retired and I've been out of service for over 10, oh geez, 12 years now. I still to this day, I am a Marine and I will be a Marine till the day I die. I'm not an ex-soldier, an ex-airman. No, I am a Marine. And that's the way that we look at it. Once a Marine, always a Marine. It's not some kind of cliche that we just throw around. That's reality. That is real life. But yeah, the Marine Corps to this day, I mean, I miss my brothers, and I still
Yeah.
some of them. And I would Marine Corps and the United States government needed me to come back. I would come back to this day. I would strap my boots on to the best of my ability and close with and destroy the enemy by fire, maneuver, combat.
Don't get me all excited, sir. You get me all motivated. It's a freaking Saturday morning. I mean, yeah, well, it's good. It's good. I'm glad that it's still, the fire's still there, and as it should be, rightfully so. You did 20 years. It's a great day to be an American in America. You know what I mean?
It
So
is.
let me ask you. You talked about inpatient treatment. The first officer apparently there while you were there in Pendleton. I do remember the old hospital. It's crazy.
I
That's
do.
crazy. I do
Yeah,
remember the old hospital. Yeah. Well, there. Anyway, sorry. Just reminiscing. The old hospital, right, down in Pendleton, inpatient treatment. You talk about getting mental health, right? Marines transition from uniform to service. I'm gonna touch this piece a little bit more. They struggle mentally, right, finding purpose, staying a mission task oriented, right? And then they struggle up here, which therefore they take a 30-inch step in the wrong direction. You talk about the tools for the toolbox. Specifically, right now, if a service member is struggling with transition and they're taking 30-inch steps in the wrong direction, I want them to come back. Well,
yep.
bring them back to us right now and give them something right now that's tangible immediately. Like, hey, look, this will work for me. It might work for you. Help them out. Like,
Yeah. Well, that's good. You put it in that perspective. Being who we are, we have meaning in our life, serving something greater. Obviously, as a gunnery sergeant, you're a leader of Marines. And so, I struggled initially with finding meaning in my life. I have my wife, I have my son, I have meaning, but it's different as for Marines, right? We were United States Marines, and having that meaning, that purpose in our life. When we exit active duty service and we become civilians, we are just like the rest of the chaff out there. We are not unique anymore. I mean, 6% of the military, 6% of the United States population are the United States military. And by law, congressional law, the United States Marine Corps is what, approximately 225,000. So we are 0.0001, whatever percent of the population. And so we are somebody. And when we exit active service, I would just encourage people to find meaning in their life and realize that we are still somebody. And that's becoming involved in the Veterans of Foreign Wars, the Military Order of the Purple Heart. There's chapters in every state, or simply advocating for other veterans like I do as part of America First Vets. And encouraging military service members to run for political office, because I think that that is something that military service members specifically can find meaning in their life. Those individuals that have been leaders at the front have integrity and have the ability with discernment to be leaders in political office. I think that that's a great opportunity for military service members to find meaning. And even if you're not interested in doing that, become a precinct committeeman, get involved in your local charities, things of that nature. There's still opportunities, because as Marines, we gave, whether you're in for 4 years or you're in 20, we give, always the give, never the ask, so to speak, and kind of a reverse. And I think that's what makes us unique, is we give everything that we have. So find something you can give to and make yourself relevant in, that's the struggle, right? Irrelevant in my eyes. Yeah, absolutely. I mean something, and I'm going to do something in my community, set that example for my wife, my son. I'm still doing the things that I need to do every day.
Find meaning. It's good. You mean something.
Yeah.
Have you personally struggled with somebody that committed suicide close to you?
I have, but I've never, every single person that I know that has passed because of suicide, it has been because they struggle with the exact same things that we're talking about now. I think that the Department of Veteran Affairs, and it depends on where you go, the Department of Veteran Affairs has a very robust mental health system to help out veterans right now. And I have nothing bad to say about it, and I won't say anything bad about the VA. They help me out immensely. And so every person that I know that has committed suicide, it is because exactly what we're talking about, and they struggle to find relevancy, right? That definition of who they are after they've left the Marine Corps. They don't have the job they want, the education, the wife, the family, things of that nature. I mean, you go from the military going 100 miles per hour every day to civilian life, and you're driving 35 miles per hour on cruise control every day. It's the same thing every day. There's nothing unique that's happening in your life like it did with us in the Marine Corps. It was, 15 minutes. Hey, be over here in 15 minutes. We're going out. We're going to do this, and chop chop. We're changing the location. We're going to do something. Here, it's the doldrum of every day. And yeah, of course, there's a mental health aspect that goes into that. Maybe PTSD, things that they've seen. But again, all the people that I know that've committed suicide is essentially because they weren't happy. They couldn't find meaning in their life, and so they decided, unfortunately, to take it.
Yeah. How did that, you talk about finding meaning and you're hitting that piece. I think that's hits home for you. And I think it hits home for me as well. Just struggling personally from suicide, people that we know. Can you talk about a little bit of the emotions there after they're gone? So that way the listeners actually hone in on, or the ones that are struggling with it, realize, hey, like, it's just more than just what you're doing here, more than just finding meaning. It affects us all. It's like the ripple in the water. It just keeps going. And you don't see what happens under the water. You just see what happens on the surface, right?
Yeah,
Just that piece.
absolutely. Let me talk from personal experience. And I think, for your listeners out there, people that are watching this, suicide is something that's real. And I think that the average statistic when we talk about military service members is, things we've seen, the things that we've done. Every military service member at some point has thought about it. And that's just the reality at some point. But it's that ability to move from hopelessness to hope. and I'll just talk from personal, for years, I struggle with, guilt, having lost my friends or Marines and, what could I have done better? What could I have done to change this? And, it's being honest with yourself. For me, I went through, I forget, the cognitive, training for PTSD. And, they asked specific questions. I had the counselor on the other side of the aisle saying, hey, Chris, have you ever thought about suicide? And you have to, give yourself an honest answer. And, but it's that ability to, again, those people in those positions to find meaning in their life. I have an amazing wife. I have an amazing son, and, first and foremost, I have a strong faith in my Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. So, it's finding that meaning in your life. But even to this day, I just don't understand why, people can get so hopeless that they have to commit suicide. And I think at every turn, when you look at somebody who has committed suicide, it's because they were alone. How did someone get to such a point that they were alone, that they were able to, use a firearm or, take those pills? Why was somebody not there in their life? And again, I've been lucky because I've never been alone. We see it on X all the time. We see it on social media is, hey, we're doing a buddy check, right? Go out there and check your buddies. Don't be afraid to ask the hard questions. What the hell's going on? What do you need? Force those people to do the things that they're not willing to do for themselves.
That's good. That's good. I do notice a big veteran community on X. I'm starting to, anyways, and it's really good. Even if that's all you have, I mean, that's something better than
Right.
nothing, right? That's good. I'll tell you what, if you're listening, find meaning, find purpose, and find it quickly. And find a central group of people that you trust and go from there. Everything else will follow through. And I think spiritually, believing in something, like for you, for example, and for me, it's our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. So it's good. It's good that that's a good foundation to have for those listeners. So find something, find meaning, find spiritual meaning. That way you can go past just what you see. That's good. Sir, I'll tell you what. So far, so good. You know that eventually I'm going to start asking specific questions, and we're almost there. And I
Go.
got to ask, your following on X is heavily. I don't think it's the only reason, but I think a reason is of your experience on what happened during what, last year or 2 years ago. Or last, or actually a couple way year a long time ago, on January 6th, right? Talk about that experience, whether you want to be specific or not. I think it's up to you, sir, but very broadly, like, hey, for the family, how was it? For you, how was it? And then now the end result, where you're at now.
Yeah, absolutely. So January 6th it's always going to come up. And I tell people, I was more before January 6th and I'm going to be more after J6. J6 isn't something that's going to define me for the rest of my life, and it's a topic right now, but it's not something, 10 years from now to be like, hey, I was over at J6 and, that's the only, that's the most pivotal point in my life. Yeah, it was something that happened. I had to go to federal prison because of it. Yeah. Here's the reality, Gunny. You know, I served obviously over 20 years in the Marine Corps, and when I stood on those yellow footprints, I swore to support, defend the Constitution of the United States. And I don't care if you're liberal. I don't care if you're independent. I don't care if you're a libertarian. I don't care if you're a Republican. My goal is to protect the people of the United States of America. I didn't go to January 6th in 2021 to, um, protest a stolen vote, because the reality is they should have already fixed that before we were going into 2021. The reason why I went to DC in January was to protect people, because if you remember, for 4 years, right, from 2016 all the way through 2020, look at, Portland, look at Baltimore, Chicago, St. Louis. I was in Kansas at the time. Cities were burning. You had Antifa and BLM out there, and there were, people that were expressing their constitutional rights of free speech, and they would go and they would get beat. People fail to realize the billions of dollars worth of damage and the cities that will never, never recover because of what BLM and Antifa did, burning those cities down, the communities that will never recover. And there were people beaten. And yes, there were unfortunately people killed by these groups just because they wanted to express their First Amendment rights. And we forget about that. So my main concern going into January 6th was, are individuals that are going there to protest what they consider to be a stolen election. And that's a whole different discussion, whether I believe that or not. And I do believe that there are some issues there for sure, but that's another discussion. But I believe that why I went there was to protect people. And that's exactly what I did. I wanted to make sure people were able to get to their cars, get to where they were going. And I didn't want to see them, beat or killed. And so I went to DC to do exactly that. Man, it's such a complex story. I mean, sometimes
Yeah.
I feel like I don't even know where to begin. But in my case specifically, there was a confidential undercover FBI human source. My case is the only case that specifically involves that confidential CHS. So when you hear that there were no undercover agents there or confidential human sources, there absolutely were. Absolutely were. I went with the flow. I didn't see anything that day that would indicate that there was something odd going on. I saw people praying. I saw people singing, carrying American flags. I felt that the atmosphere that day was jovial, was excited, was patriotic. And what transpired that day, I still believe was a direct result of other people putting things in place to make that happen. And I say that for a few reasons. When I was standing on one of the sides of the Capitol that day with this FBI informant next to me who I did not know, and he literally tells me, "Hey man, you want to go in?" I mean, I've seen the FBI transcripts. My case is sealed because of the FBI informant. I'm trying to unseal that and get that information. But, I've seen some statements that were leaked. And I put those out on X as well. And he literally says, "Hey, man, you want to go inside?" I'm really worried people are going to do things that are bad and steal stuff or whatever. And so, again, the only reason why I decided to go into the Capitol that day, I was nonviolent. I didn't break anything. I didn't steal anything. I did not engage with anybody in a negative way. I went into the Capitol and I was there for about 20 minutes. And while inside, I stopped somebody from smoking a marijuana cigarette, right? I literally made people clean up trash inside the Capitol. There's videographic evidence. And I engaged with police officers in a positive way to see, hey, what can I do? And at one point, a police lieutenant said, "Can you make people leave?" Hey, roger that, sir. I made people leave. Again, there's videographic evidence, but the fact that I was inside that Capitol that day and I believed that I was a veteran is why I was prosecuted. And I
Wow.
believe that I was prosecuted because I was a veteran. There's a large contingent of people that are January 6ers that are veterans that they actively went after. And they didn't go after people that did bad stuff, that weren't veterans. So I mean, there's a mixed bag to hold there. But let's look at the reality of this Gunny, and it kind of brings things up. And I apologize if I kind of sidetrack a little bit here. I was stationed in Washington D.C., which is a military district of Washington, for 3 years, so I know all the military units were there. I believe that day, and this is just me asking you a question. Do you believe if they would have taken active duty service members in uniform, knowing the MAGA crowd, the American patriots, do you believe if they would have taken, let's say, 300 Marines and put them in strategic positions around the Capitol, do you think anybody would have gone there that day? I mean, seriously. I mean,
I think they still would have been there. The aftermath of it, for aftermath of it all, I don't think it would have happened. I don't think anything would have happened.
and I agree. I don't believe that would have happened. And here's the issue, right? So, there's people that say that, oh, the National Guard wasn't called and, everything else. Let's look at the military district of Washington. Their motto is "This will defend," and they're supposed to provide general and support to the United States Capitol and the surrounding area. That's beyond the parades, the fancy dog and pony shows, things of that nature. They're supposed to provide support. Just down the road, a nice brisk jog, 8 minutes at most, you have Marine Barracks 8th and 9th, Bravo Company, which I was in Bravo Company. The company is trained for civil military operations. We are trained to control riots. You have an entire company of Marines that were down there, could have been there, staged strategic points to say, hey, look, this areas off guard. You shouldn't be in here. And I think that the MAGA crowd, having an immense respect for our military veterans, would have never gone past them. But beyond that, the military district of Washington contains thousands of people. You have an entire military police battalion at their disposal, motor transport, headquarters company. I mean, you name it, right? You could have had people down there, and you could have put people. I just don't think I just don't think that it would have happened if people would have taken the precautionary steps, if people would have taken a position of forward-looking leadership.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, it was fascinating to see the entire event and then the result of it and where everybody ended up in. We talk about having after actions about yourself, about situations, and we have to do after action report with ourselves here. What do you think? What did you learn from that? What was your biggest takeaway from that situation scenario?
Wow, that's a tough question. That really is a tough question. A lot of people ask me if, given the opportunity to, would I do it again? And my answer is always, would I go to protect people again? My answer is yes. I will always protect the United States and the citizens of of the republic. But again, I didn't go to January 6th to protest a stolen election, whether I believe that or not, which I do. But that's not my whole reason for going there. Man, January 6th was a mess. There's just so many questions that I still have. Like I said, I had a undercover agent involved in my case, undercover confidential human source involved in my case. It has a lot of questions because come find out, the FBI, they were surveilling me, right? At the time before January 6th, I was a legal business owner. I had my FFL, and I had done business with, legal business with people who were part of the Proud Boys organization. They're everyday Americans just like us, but they're in a club, they're a group. And I've sold legal weapons and ammunition, and I befriended a few of them. They're blue collar working guys just like you and me. I didn't see any difference than anybody else. But come to find out, the FBI is watching me now, right? And so you have other discussions you can have about that as far as the Patriot Act and, the invasion of our privacy. But they're already watching me. But again, I have to get that information unsealed. Why are you watching me? I'm a law-abiding United States citizen, have served this military for over 20 years that hasn't done anything wrong. And so I end up in January 6th, and now I'm a veteran, and I'm being prosecuted for being at the Capitol that day, but having done nothing wrong except for trespassing. I mean, seriously, that at the extent of everything that happened that day, if I would have gotten a misdemeanor charge for trespassing, I could have accepted that, except I got charged and ultimately, with 7 absolutely ridiculous charges and had to deal with this over 4 years. And I end up pleading guilty to civil disorder, which is a felony. Yes, I am pardoned by the President of the United States, but I have that felony, right? And going through that process for over 4 years, there's that part that says, man, I wish this never happened and I would never do this again, for sure. Having gone through that, my family having been put through that. I don't know if you've seen the videos, my government that I supported for over 20 years, and I still love this country violently. Out of all the raids that have happened on people within January 6th, the raid that occurred on my house on February 11th, 2021 was the worst. I mean, Gunny, let's put it like this. You and I have probably, and I don't know you too well, we have done direct action missions, right? We've kicked in doors. I have looked at people through the sights of my firearm and had to pull the trigger, right? The FBI, Counterterrorism Task Force, a full complement of Counterterrorism Task Force agents, 3 armored vehicles, state and local police, came to my house that day and conducted an operation using military weapons, military tactics, techniques, and procedures on an American citizen on American soil that should be used against terrorists somewhere else in another country. And that happened to me that day, and I struggle with that. My wife, at the time was pregnant, and we lost our child the next day. because of that. And how do you reconcile what the government did to you and your love for this country and your belief in this country? We're talking about after action here. I still struggle with that to this day. I love this country. I think that it's amazing, but what they did to me was just absolutely appalling and unnecessary and over the top, and solely for the reasons of political persecution. Our government was weaponized against a group of people because of their conservative values, because of who they might or might not have voted for that year, voted for President Trump. I mean, it's just that's what it all boils down to. Um, and I still struggle with this to this day. But again, I found meaning. I said, you know what? I'm going to get involved in my local politics, become a precinct committeeman. I'm not going to let this happen. I'm going to move to put leaders into political positions that should be there, that have honor, integrity, and look at America and this great republic to be the ideal, the country that it's supposed to be. So yes, I still struggle with it, but that's how I try to find meaning in my life. And we're talking about after action report here, taking a hard look at everything that happened. How do I move and take that 30-inch step, as you said, in the opposite direction, to do something good?
That's good. If I may, that's good. I think that's obviously you're mature. Yes, you wouldn't be here if you weren't mature. It takes a humble man. It takes a lot of courage to admit, or not admit, but just see from a different lens. Wow, this is crazy. All the things that happen, and now I'm here. I could either go backwards. I could only go and I can go forward. I mean, I got to choose. I think you made the right choice because everything happens for a reason. You're here for a reason. You have purpose. You have meaning. And it's definitely not your story. It's definitely his story. And that's a
Yeah.
lot of thing with that's the biggest thing with history. Right? I'll tell you
And
what.
you said it right there, you talk about it's his story. My lowest point in my life, Gunny, every time I've gone through something, I firmly believe that my purpose, it's not how, do I fit into God's plans? What is God's plan for me and how am I going to follow his will according to his plan? He already knows what's going to happen. I just have to accept that I have to follow his will and follow that plan in that direction that he has laid before me. And I don't believe, for a second that everything that has happened has not happened according to his plan and for a reason, from, day one of January 6th all the way to this day. And, I pray to God and I say, thank you, God. Everything is according to your will, and I give you all the praise and the glory. And it's made me a better person. It's given me a godly and spiritual relationship with my wife and son. It has given me godly friendships and people who have moved into my life that are, moving this family and moving me forward in a positive direction. So that's what it's all about.
That's crazy. That's good. I'm be honest with you. I was nervous coming in and nervous, excited. Like, I mean, what does this guy look like in real life? The pictures, like, are they gonna do justice? I'd say, well, this was very rewarding. It was an honor and a pleasure to have you on. I'm in the presence of greatness, to be honest. So thank you for your time. Again, thank you for your service. It means a lot to me. Your experience. It's going to help other service members deal with mental health, suicide, and the help that they need, and the tools for the toolbox, and the after actions. They get to know you and feel you honestly at a different level that I would have never known. Right? If I would have just asked, like, "Hey, you want to come on, sir?" You know what I mean? Like, it was crazy that you even said yes to this just small little pond in life.
Yeah.
Any save, sir? You got any save rounds? You got a couple seconds, a couple minutes here. Last save round. And if they want to know more about you, where can they reach you at? How can they get a hold of you?
Absolutely, Gunny. I really appreciate you having me on the show. And it's not about you being a small fish in a big pond, right? We have to give all those voices credibility out there. And as a military service member, I thank you for your service. And also that the military is willing to allow you to do this and use your voice, not only for the benefit of other service members, but for civilians out there that really don't understand military service life because we're unique creatures, right? So getting voices out there like yours is important. But yeah, the absolute reality is that we have a lot of service members out there And, we need to support them still to this day. We're still a part of this country. And, I would just encourage, again, we've said this time and time again, get involved, right? If you are interested in being involved, and I'm not talking about politics, right? I'm just talking about being involved with your community. If you're in the state of Arizona, I'm the Arizona chapter president of America First Vets. We are a national organization. We care about veterans, veterans benefits, advocating for veterans, putting veterans into politics, the whole shebang. Get in contact with me. I'm on X and I am reachable. I do answer, I do repost, and, at dark_horse92. Reach out to me. Let's have a conversation and let's advocate for our veterans and let's make this country better.
That's what it's about. Sir, Captain Chris, how do you say your last name? Okay. Kuehne. I wasn't even going to try. I was going to say it in Spanish, but it would probably came out wrong. I'll tell you what, ladies and gentlemen, this is Pit Talk, pulling pits and opinions with the host, Gunny G, Captain Chris Kuehne. I thank you for your service. Where service members help service members, period. Follow, like, subscribe everywhere you get your podcasts and on Twitter, YouTube, and Rumble. Sir, I will be reaching out for a little later after this today. I got some follow-on things for you. But again, thank you for your time, ladies and gentlemen. Me and Chris, we out. Sir, I'll talk to you later.
Have a good one.
You too. Bye-bye.
Is a podcast featuring active service members who discuss their thoughts and opinions on various issues surrounding military life, current events, and history. The statements heard here are the opinions of its members and guests. These do not necessarily reflect the views of the Department of Defense and are not endorsed or sponsored in any way. Listener, viewer discretion advised.